Hello, this is a review of the Amazon Basics 2-pack of a high-speed HDMI cable and a fiber optic digital audio cable. Now, I was rather impressed with what I found from the Amazon Basics brand inside the box. So you open it up and you get what seem to be very good quality cables. Now, many different manufacturers will have 3 tiers of cables. They'll have their standard entry level, which is their most basic, thinnest ones. Then they'll have what they'll call premium, and then they'll have ultimate. And some manufacturers go off the board with even more different amounts of qualities of cables. Now, these seem to be what I would think is almost equal to or better than what other brands might call their premium cables. So I thought I would get the entry-level cables in here. But it seems to be a better quality cable, in my opinion, for what I find out of the box. They're nicely sized heads. They're well, they're well labeled that we have in here. They come with their covers on. The cable is thicker than my other cables that I have around. So this is an HDMI cable. This is the fiber optic cable. Let's compare it to a different HDMI cable I have around. And while very subtle, this is the Amazon Basics. This is my other HDMI cable that I had around. So this is a nicer, thicker cable, at least as far as shielding goes or something of that nature. I like that this isn't tightly wound like this one is, because this is going to always have kinks in it, right? I'm going to have to go and unkink this to run my cable nicely, whereas this one's going to be nicely looped out without being too tightly formed in a particular direction. I found that the HDMI cable held very firmly in my monitor. Now remember, with any connection it'll be half the cable, half the monitor, or half the device, because the port and then the cable determine how well it's going to be held. It held very firmly for me in the monitor that I'd used it in, so I was really happy with it. Now this is a high-speed Ethernet HDMI cable, and what that means is the HDMI cable also has the capability to replace an otherwise separate Ethernet cable. If you don't have wireless and your thing was going to connect via wired ability, by a combined cable it just eliminates yet one more cable that you'd have to run. So you might as well, anytime you get an HDMI cable, you might as well just go with having more things built in. I think this was great. Then we have the fiber optic cable here. This is also thicker than a comparable one that I've had around the house too. The ends are going to be nearly identical because it seems that all fiber optic cables are going to be plastic ends for some reason. It's probably just due to whatever protocol or standard it is. I've never seen a metal end on a fiber optic cable. But these little soft things that protect the fiber optic cable inside stay on just well. It's a nice big end. It's not overly tightly bounded. Fiber optic cables cannot be kinked. That's just a fact of the point of it travels light along it, and if you kink it too much, then you're going to cause a problem for the signal to break. So even other brands won't bind those cables too tightly. Even these, the thickness of the shielding on them is bigger on the Amazon Basic here compared to the other brand that I have here. So overall, I'm really happy with these. Now, they're both digital cables. Now, to be fair, I would say that some of the point of quality of cables and having premium cables is a bit of hoopla over whether or not they can actually improve things. Once you have a digital signal, you mostly get the signal or you don't. And so the point, digital is still inherently analog at some point, if you're familiar with electrical engineering. But the idea is that even if it degrades, it'll still maintain the full signal up until the point it just loses it all. For the most part. I mean, yes, there's all this talk about error correction and other things, but with these kinds of data, I don't believe it matters a whole lot, other than you want decent construction of the cable, you want them to stay plugged in, you don't want kinks, and you don't want any faults in it. Like if the metal conductor along the way wasn't constructed really well, maybe it'll have a break, and maybe if you flex it just one too many times, it would stop working or have other problems. There is a point of having shielding on some cables. Fiber optic isn't subject to electrical interference, so whereas something that is just run along a copper wire inside is. So You don't have to worry about shielding much on this other than it stays on the fiber optic cable and doesn't kink. And on this one, you know, shielding will matter to an extent. The longer run you go, like you have to go seriously long runs, tend to need more out of protection out of cables. Digital cables. Now analog cables, whatever it degrades, you literally lose what you lost in the degradation, but digital you won't usually lose very much in that. Now to be fair, I mean there are inside your computer you have SATA cables and other things, and it starts to matter how much shielding you have on cables, and that's why a USB 3 maybe require shielding, or USB 2 or 1, it was optional, and so on. But we're not here to really get into the theory of these, other than I think these cables are great. I was really happy and surprised what I found inside of the Amazon Basics brand. Thank you for watching the review.